2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10. And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then am I strong.
Be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. This is the As Good Soldiers video podcast.
The Apostle Paul was a giant of the faith. He was the spiritual leader and teacher for multiple churches, and in teaching them, he wrote much of our New Testament. But even Paul had troubles. In fact, Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 talks about many hardships, pains, frustrations, and disappointments that he had suffered in his Christian service. And as he gets to the end of the chapter, he makes an interesting statement. He said, If I must needs glory, I will glory in the things which concern mine infirmities. Then in chapter 12, he tells us about a vexing problem that continually troubled him. He referred to it as a thorn in the flesh. We're not told exactly what it was. Some people believe it was a physical pain. Others think it was maybe persecution or a spiritual struggle. There's some people who even believe it might have had something to do concerning his vision. But maybe the lack of detail is intentional, because whatever that thorn was, I think it allows us to look at this passage in the light of our own struggles. Paul said in 2 Corinthians 12:7, And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. Whatever this was, it wasn't a small inconvenience. The word buffet means to strike repeatedly. This thorn hurt, it lingered, and Paul did exactly what we would do. He prayed earnestly for God to remove it. He said in verse 8, For this thing I besought the Lord thrice that it might depart from me. 3 times Paul pleaded, not just asked, but pleaded with God. This is the same Paul that preached with power, that watched lives be transformed by the power of Christ. You'd think if anybody could expect a quick answer to prayer, it would be Paul. But God's response was not what Paul asked for. Instead, God's response was, My grace is sufficient for thee, and my strength is made perfect in weakness. God's answer was not what Paul had wanted, but it was exactly what Paul needed. God doesn't deny Paul because he's uncaring. He denies the request because he has something much deeper, stronger, more lasting to give. His grace. God tells Paul, you don't need less weakness, you need more of me. And notice this, God said that his strength is made perfect in weakness. Not in confidence, not in success, not in having it all together. Those are the things that the world promotes as strength. But weakness is not a barrier to God's power, it's the doorway. See, our self-reliance is the pride that leads to destruction that we're warned about in Proverbs 16:18. But as we learn to rely on God, He's able to show Himself strong in our lives and do exceeding abundantly above all that we can ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. That's Ephesians 3:20. But Paul's response to God's answer is astonishing. Instead of resentment or discouragement, he said, Most gladly, therefore, will I glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. That's a radical shift. Paul moves from asking God to remove the thorn to allowing God to redeem it and to use it for His glory. He realizes the presence of weakness doesn't mean the absence of God. In fact, when it comes in our submission to His will, it often means that God is closer than ever. Paul goes on to say in verse 10, For when I am weak, then am I strong. This isn't a denial of his pain that he was going through. Instead, it's a declaration of his dependence on his loving God. Paul is saying, when I reach the end of myself, I finally get out of the way and make room for the strength of Christ to do his wonderful work. Maybe today you're living with a thorn, something that you've prayed over again and again. It might be a health issue, a strained relationship, maybe a fear that you haven't given over to God, and you're wondering why God hasn't taken it away. In sharing his struggle with his thorn, Paul reminds us that when our prayers are not answered in the way that we wanted, it isn't because our God is unloving or uncaring. Sometimes God calms the storm, other times he strengthens his child to walk through it. And our desire, whatever the circumstances, should always be to bring glory to him. God's grace doesn't always change our circumstances, but it always changes us. Here's the hope. The same grace that sustained Paul is available to us today. God hasn't overlooked your prayer. He hasn't ignored your tears. When you are serving him in his will, his grace is sufficient for you, right where you are, not where you wish you were. Instead of asking, why hasn't God removed this? Maybe the better question is, what is God revealing and working through this for his glory? Like Paul said in Philippians 2:13, it is God which worketh in you, both to will and to do of his good pleasure. Because when weakness humbles us, draws us closer to Christ, it deepens our trust. It becomes the very place where God's power shines the brightest. If you're carrying a thorn today, don't give up. In fact, be of good cheer. You're not forgotten. You're not disqualified. You're not alone. His grace is sufficient always. So be strong in his grace. Stay focused on Christ. Encourage your fellow soldiers. And above all, fight to please the one who called you, because we know he's worthy. And that's what it means to live as a good soldier.